We have a brand new CBS News poll of the race in South Carolina. CBS News polling now shows that former President Donald Trump holds a 35-point advantage in the Palmetto State. It doesn't seem like Nikki Haley, the former ambassador, is getting a home state bump. In fact, 75% of South Carolina Republicans told CBS News that Haley being from South Carolina makes no difference to them in terms of their vote. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Anthony, thanks for being here. So it is Ambassador Haley's home state, but it's not seeming to give her much of an advantage, if any. In fact, she's back, way back. What explains that?
Nope. And we came right out and asked that. Bob, does it matter to you as a voter that she's from South Carolina? And as you said at the top, 3/4 said no, it doesn't make a difference. And then it gives you a picture of the nationalization of this race when you look at this. One, the overwhelming numbers say they're voting on national issues, not South Carolina issues. And then this, looking back, Haley gets a positive net rating for how she handled her job as governor from the South Carolina voters. Okay, but even more of them, and I'll point you to this 82%, look back at Donald Trump's presidency and give him their an even higher approval rating. So, yes, Haley's seen positively, Trump as president even more so, and that explains some of that lack of a home state advantage, Bob.
Anthony, former Ambassador Haley has started in recent weeks to level a lot of critiques of former President Trump in her campaign. You've tested some of those critiques. Are they resonating with Republican voters?
I have, and I'm going to show you this one right off the bat because it's really topical. Is Donald Trump fit to be president if he gets convicted of a crime? And you look at the lopsided number of these voters who say yes. In fact, in their minds, he still would be fit. That's one of the things that Nikki Haley's been talking about, but it isn't resonating with voters there. In fact, if you look at Trump voters and ask them, are those legal fights or any kind of concern about them reason enough to maybe consider Nikki Haley, you get this lopsided number who say, no, it is not, Bob.
And finally, Anthony, we're about more than a week out from the South Carolina primary. What can change, if anything, between now and then?
Well, I'll tell you, as a pollster, I usually like to say things can always change. But having said that, I'm going to show you a thing what the voters are saying right here. Where are you firmly decided? Could you still change your mind? And you've got lopsided numbers for both candidates that say they're firmly decided. So it is going to be an uphill fight for Haley. And she's getting about the same percent in South Carolina that we've seen her get in national polling. So again, it echoes that idea that this is a very nationalized race from here, Bob.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you. CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us now from South Carolina. Caitlin, great to see you. Let's begin by listening to your conversation today with former Ambassador Haley about her campaign.
You have had a front row seat to Donald Trump and his presidency. Do you take Donald Trump at his word when it comes to what he said about NATO?
I absolutely take him at his word, because in the last administration, he threatened to get out of NATO multiple times. He truly believes that. In his last administration, and it's not because I'm running for president, you can go look at my last in the book With All Due Respect. I make it very clear that I had to sit down with him and say he had to stop the bromance that was happening with Putin and Russia. I saw the press conference the two of them had. I said, this is not right. This is not normal. And you look at the situation, the idea that he would side with Putin, a man who kills his opponents, a man who is holding Evan Gersovich prisoner right now just for doing his journalistic job, a man who has never been shy about saying he wants to defeat America, and you're going to choose him over an ally that was with us after 9/11? Think about that. NATO has been a success story for 75 years. Russia has never invaded a NATO country because Russia's intimidated by that alliance. China's even intimidated by that alliance. Why would you go and put that alliance in harm's way? Why wouldn't, if you do care about making them pay more, talk about it behind closed doors? But think about it. He goes 2 minutes off script from a teleprompter. And that's how unhinged and that's how undisciplined he comes out sounding. That's a problem.
Are you concerned about this provoking something bigger if he were president?
The reason I'm concerned is, on one side, yes, it's from my national security side. When I was at the UN, I know the dangers. I dealt with Russia, China, and Iran every day. But it's also from a personal side. My husband is a veteran. I'm a military spouse. We're a club. Military families stick together. The last thing we want is for our loved ones to go to war. When you say something like that, not only do you endanger our allies, you endanger every man and woman that serves in the military. There's not one of them right now that listens to him say that doesn't feel like America doesn't have their back.
I want to ask you about your husband, because the former president did attack him, criticize him. Are those comments disqualifying?
I think you have to look at the fact that, again, it's him unhinged. It's the chaos that surrounds him. He goes off the teleprompter, and you're going to mock my husband who's deployed 8,000 miles away? I mean, South Carolina is a heavy military state. We are proud of our men and women here. But these men and women, it's not just them that sacrifice, their families sacrifice. And if they're willing to go and shed blood for the freedoms that we hold dear, for the country that we're so blessed to live in, what does that say about someone who wants to be commander-in-chief? Because as a military spouse, it makes me worry about Michael's safety.
Caitlin, great exchange with former Ambassador Haley as you work the campaign trail. Beyond talking to the candidates, you're talking to voters in South Carolina, as your exchange detailed. This is a military state in many respects, a lot of military families. Are voters paying more attention to Trump's comments about someone serving right now in uniform, Nikki Haley's husband, Michael, or are they paying more attention to the differences on foreign policy between Haley and Trump, which are real?
Yeah, Bob, it's a good question. And we have seen this divide in the Republican Party, especially when it comes to how to handle Ukraine. And you've seen increasingly over the past several months, Republicans move away from a hawkish view and questioning this kind of spending. You heard from Republicans on Capitol Hill coming to Donald Trump's defense on his comments on NATO. And that's why I asked Nikki Haley if she took Trump at his word. What's interesting about South Carolina here, and our poll reflects that, is even when you talk to voters who supported Nikki Haley as governor, that doesn't necessarily translate to national support. And we see that in our poll. When I was here a couple of weeks ago, right after the New Hampshire primary, I talked to voters who said that they liked her as governor, but they were kind of leaning towards Trump because he was experienced as president. So this is an uphill climb for her, as our poll shows, but she's on a bus tour over the past couple of days and on to tomorrow, really trying to capture every vote that she can. And what we've seen today, especially, is that she really has ramped up those attacks against Trump. Earlier today, she called him unqualified. And speaking of her husband's military service, she said that the closest that Donald Trump has ever gotten to a dangerous situation is maybe getting hit by a golf ball at Mar-a-Lago. And so you're seeing those attacks ramp up. But as our polling shows, this is a big hill for her to climb. She also said, I asked about her path, how long she's going to stay in this. She says she's in this at least through Super Tuesday and wants to close the gap here in South Carolina. So nobody is projecting any sort of victory here, but narrowing that big gap seems to be the goal.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much. CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett joins us now here at the table. Major, let's go back to the issue of former President Trump. I want to play for you some comments he made about NATO in recent days. Let's listen.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Let's just go over that quote one more time. Yeah. In fact, I would, quote, encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. Former President Trump talking about the scenario of a delinquent NATO ally in terms of an attack from Russia. Does it just fade into the wind in terms of this campaign, or is this a moment where some Republicans and others start to say maybe there are some issues here?
Okay, I don't think Republicans will decide the South Carolina primary or any other primary in the immediate future based on this. That doesn't mean it will not have real-world ramifications. And this is more than Trump has ever said. I covered President Trump. I went to NATO summits.
Written multiple books about him.
I saw the interaction. It's worth putting on the record that the push for NATO members to increase their annual defense spending began during the Obama administration. That message was first and most harshly delivered by then Defense Secretary Robert Gates. It's been a U.S. concern for quite a while, but President Trump is much louder about it. He's much more abrasive about it. And for Trump's supporters, they believe he made good on it. He rattled NATO's cage and made them spend more on joint defense. And if he hadn't been there, those budgets would not have been as fortified as they are now. What's different about this is do whatever the hell you want. Whoa, whoa. That's not what NATO's about. That's not what the post-World War II European security understanding of NATO is about. And that's why I'm talking about real-world ramifications. If you're Vladimir Putin and you hear that, and you're thinking about the Baltics, as he always does, those are his words, not mine, this is the kind of thing that sounds, if not like an invitation, a kind of low-level permission slip. And that is why this has real-world ramifications if former President Trump becomes the nominee and moves ever closer to the U.S. presidency.
When we step away from the race and you think about if Trump wins another term in the White House, what would this mean for U.S. foreign policy if you have a president who believes what Trump just said verbatim?
So, on one level, and I guarantee you, Trump supporters and the former president, if he were sitting right here, would say there's a real simple answer to that, Robert. Pay up. Just pay what you said you're going to pay. Pay your 2% or whatever the assigned percentage is. Just pay that. And he said, then it's all fine. Don't worry about it. As he just said, and I guarantee when Trump supporters hear that, pay your bills, they're like, yes. They're rapturous about that. Stop treating America like suckers, like we have to police and protect everyone. There are, of course, within NATO, domestic political realities that you cannot change as a U.S. president. You can influence at the margins, and you understand that bringing those countries along on their terms, maybe at their pace, is more helpful long-term to the preservation of that defensive alliance. But if you ignore all that and completely brush it aside, then that alliance, by its very nature, becomes more fragile. And if it becomes more fragile, Robert, it becomes what? More inviting. More inviting to whom? Vladimir Putin.
And just quickly here, Major, you heard Caitlin Huey-Burns report. She says Nikki Haley is going to stay in through Super Tuesday in early March. Do you buy that?
I do. I think she has enough money and enough reserve capacity politically, and her energy level and her intensity about this is such that even if she gets shellacked in South Carolina, even if she loses by 10 or 20, she'll go on through Super Tuesday. But if she doesn't put up a single victory through Super Tuesday, there is nothing to keep campaigning for. There is only, in case of emergency, break glass candidacy, which is kind of where she is right now, absent any other shift in the polling data. But let's be honest, there's some glass that may need to be broken, and there might be an emergency situation come the middle of this year, based on the court cases former President Trump is still facing. So that is her other backdoor rationale to stay in. But Super Tuesday, yeah, she'll be until then.
Major Garrett, thank you.